Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Abhineet Shukla and with me is Nipunika Shahid, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets US Congressional Delegation, says people's participation based on democratic ethos played key role in managing COVID pandemic situation in India. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says India's economy well on upward trajectory as the country is recovering from COVID-19 pandemic. Indian Air Force to showcase its might at Dubai Air Show tomorrow, Sarang, Surya Kiran aerobatics teams and light combat aircraft Tejas to take part in the event. Final draft of Climate Summit COP26 calls to accelerate the phasing out of coal and fossil fuels. President Ramnath Kovind presents National Sports Awards in New Delhi. Tokyo Olympics medalists Neeraj Chopra, Ravi Kumar Dahiya and Lavlina Borgohain among 12 sportspersons honoured with Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award. And in T20 Cricket World Cup, Australia to lock horns with New Zealand in summit clash at Dubai tomorrow. As India created history by administering over 100 crore COVID vaccination doses against COVID-19, All India Radio salutes all the doctors, nurses, other frontline workers and all those who got vaccinated and made this possible. Even though the country has achieved this feat, we caution our listeners that the battle against COVID is not yet over. We appeal to our listeners to get fully vaccinated at the earliest and also help others get vaccinated. During the festival season, please follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi met US Congressional Delegation led by Senator John Cornyn in New Delhi. John Cornyn is the co-founder and co-chair of the Senate Caucus on India and Indian Americans. During the meeting, the congressional delegation noted the excellent management of COVID situation in India in spite of the challenges of large and diverse population. The Prime Minister noted that people's participation based on democratic ethos of the country played a key role in managing the worst pandemic of the last 1 century. Prime Minister Modi also appreciated the consistent support and constructive role of the US Congress in deepening the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership, which is anchored in shared democratic values. There was also a warm and frank discussion on regional issues of mutual interest, including those related to South Asia and the Indo-Pacific region. During the meeting, Mr. Modi also exchanged views on the potential for enhancing the bilateral relationship and strengthening cooperation on contemporary global issues such as terrorism, climate change and reliable supply chains for critical technologies. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said that India's economy is firing well and the trade figures are in the upward trajectory as the country is recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. Interacting with media persons at India Pavilion at the Dubai Expo 2020, Mr. Jaishankar said there are 2 parallel processes going on across the world. One is the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and another is the recovery of the economy. Both are resilient in different forms. The minister also emphasized that the next 2 months or years will really indicate which has been more resilient. Talking about the COVID-19 vaccination drive, he said, at least for India, we have now crossed 100 crore vaccine shots. The pace is continuing. There is the confidence that in the next few weeks and months, most of the eligible people will get their both shots. Stressing that the recovery has created more optimism in India, the External Affairs Minister said, it is already being reflected in our trade figures. This year may be actually our best year in trade. So the trade recovery has been very strong. We don't think it is just the end of the demand. It will continue to remain strong, Dr. Jaishankar added.
The Indian Air Force contingent will take part in the biennial Dubai Air Show to be held at the Al Maktoum International Airport from tomorrow, and it will continue up to 18th of this month. The IAF has been invited by the government of UAE to participate with the Sarang and Surya Kiran aerobatics teams. These teams will be performing along with some of the best aerobatics and display teams in the world, including the Saudi Hawks, Russian Knights and the UAE's Al Fursan. In addition, the IAF's Light Combat Aircraft Tejas will be part of the aerobatics and static displays during the show. The Dubai Air Show will be the first occasion for the Surya Kirans and the Tejas to show off their swashbuckling aerial maneuvers. Besides aerobatics and other air shows, various technical aspects of the aviation industry will also be discussed in the sideline of the program. More from our correspondent.
Dubai Air Show will be the most important and critical point of convergence in 2021, where the future of global airspace industry will be showcased and analyzed. The new technology showcase will provide a platform to exhibit the latest tech and will also include key conference programs on topics such as 5G, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. Welcoming experts from commercial and business aviation, defense and military, aircraft interiors, the show will serve as an ideal platform for rethinking strategies, navigating uncertainty and scaling up operations to ensure the smooth establishment of industry in general. According to latest ETA report, the second half of 2021 is expected to see improvements after a difficult 2021 first half. Aggressive cross-cutting is expected to combine with increased travel demands during 2021 due to reopening of borders and testing and widespread availability of a vaccine. Sanjeev Singh.
Nations have softened their stand on fossil fuels phase out at COP26 Glasgow meet. A new draft of the final deal that could emerge from the COP26 climate summit appears to have watered down its call to curb fossil fuels, but did not remove all mention of the need for their phase out. The texts from Glasgow are the first UN climate papers to make a specific mention of fossil fuels. Meanwhile, India has called for collective resolve for accelerated mitigation and adaptation actions to combat climate change. A statement read by Union Environment, Forests and Climate Change Minister Bhupinder Yadav at Conference of Parties said this message will have credibility only if accompanied by an equally strong resolve of developed country parties to mobilize and provide enhanced climate finance to developed country parties. The outcomes of COP26 must reflect the urgency in scaling up finance and other means of implementation support to developing countries, he stressed at the Stocktake plenary. The 2022 edition of the Conference of Parties, or the 27th COP, will take place at Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on COP26 in Glasgow and the declarations. In conversation are Dr. Shrikant K. Panigrahi, Director General of Indian Institute of Sustainable Development, and Sanjay Jha, journalist.
Amid disputes over fossil fuel and funding, the UN Climate Summit has gone into overtime. The UN Climate Summit heads into extra time as negotiators work to strike deal. COP26 talks was supposed to have officially finished on Friday evening, but leaders and negotiators are continuing to work to strike a deal that would spare the world the most dire effects of global warming. US climate envoy John Kerry has called fossil fuel subsidies a definition of insanity. Hundreds of COP26 delegates have also staged walkout. Dr. Panigrahi, what's happening in this COP talk? Do you think this delay is a good sign?
No, delay is certainly not a good sign. The problem is, in a negotiation, there are many parties involved. It is a legal process and all the parties have their rights to keep their views. And everybody will strongly put forward their argument, the scientific basis, and try to justify their claim. And all has to be mutually accept something which will be agreeable to all the negotiators. Then the deal is finalized. COP since the day one, that is 31st October, for 2 weeks COP26 is going on, where 200 countries are participating, member countries of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And CCC is COP26, where all the negotiators of these countries are participating, they are putting forward their argument. As you told, there are certain issues which is not agreeable, and there are difference of opinion, and things are not able to settle down. There are stalemates, there are stumbling blocks. Negotiation ultimately the entire negotiated text is put in a draft document, and slowly the draft documents becomes to a final stage. In COP26, there is so much divergence of views, as you told, on climate finance, because climate finance is the key to everything. Technology transfer will not be able to possible without finance. Adaptation is very crucial. Whole world is burning in forest fires. There is a lot of adverse impact of climate change. Sea level rise, where 58 island state nations, their existence is endangered. The temperature is already rising 1.2 degrees centigrade, coming very close to 1.5. And all these math and calculations to keep the temperature below 1.5 degrees centigrade, for which John Kerry, Indian delegates, and all the world and thousands of activities are asking for. But on the other hand, the developing, and all the member countries are having their commitments in NDC, National Determined Contributions. And as per these NDC commitments, when the calculation is done, it is seen that by the end of this century, we will be at 2.7 degrees centigrade, which is not acceptable. Humanity will not survive with this amount of global warming. So at least that should be restricted to 1.5 degree. And how much we can achieve? How can we have more ambition in our NDCs? That has been asked for. And like India has improved, Indian Prime Minister committed 5 mantras, and he told it Panchamrita in the beginning of the conference along with British Prime Minister. And ultimately, many countries come up with their ambitions, and taking all the ambitions into account, it is recalculated. It improved to up to 2.4, just 0.3 degrees centigrade, which is nothing. And it is very, very far from 1.5 degrees centigrade, which is at least desirable that planet can tolerate. And again, the developed countries has promised 100 billion per year. In Copenhagen in 2009, a lot of time has been passed. It is more than 10, 11 years, and nothing, very hardly 11 to 12% of the money has flown. And that is again not from the pockets of the developed nation or industrial nation, but from international organizations, largely UN organizations, although all the member countries are contributing to these funds also.
You spoke about how the developed countries have failed to fulfill their commitments of climate financing. COP26 draft deal trades fine line to spur climate action on all the stakeholders. The first draft agreement that came out on Wednesday morning had 20 paragraphs in the mitigation section, emphasizing the need to raise the ambition of climate actions to meet the 1.5 degree Celsius target, as you have rightly said. While the proposal retained its core demand for nations to set tougher climate pledges next year, vulnerable countries have said that they needed a more ambitious deal on financial compensation, with contributions from rich countries responsible for global warming going to poorer countries facing huge cost of worsening storms, droughts, and rising sea levels. So, this demand from the poorer and vulnerable countries of immediate financing, you think the developed countries are serious about doing that?
Yes. See, as I told you, climate finance is the key and basic. The entire planet is going through a great crisis now. There are 58 island states who are facing extinction because of sea level rise, and they have a lot of serious demands for their survival. India, UK, and Australia come together to help $10 million each to these 58 island state nations, which was declared by Australian Prime Minister, British Prime Minister, and Indian Prime Minister Modi at the beginning of the COP26 itself. India has always supported G77, which includes all these 58 island states. India and other developing countries are together in a platform with poorer countries and particularly island state nations. These island state nations are very poor. They don't have much money to spare for climate action, whereas they need more protection and more investment. And they are expecting public as well as private investment, but nothing is happening to the poorer nations. Whereas developed nations those who have occupied more of the carbon spaces has not yet opened their initiatives towards mitigation commitments, around $100 per year. And even Indian Prime Minister mentioned in his deliberations that India will be needing climate finance at the tune of $1 trillion. Such island nations and Africa demanding $1,000 trillion. The adaptation problems are at the peak, and Indian Ambassador Manjit Singh Puri demanded that there should be enough adaptation finance has to be provided on urgent basis. UNFCCC has a very small adaptation fund, which is peanuts, and that is nothing and not able to meet the real requirement. So it is a very urgent time. The developed nations should come forward for climate finance and especially the adaptation finance.
You spoke about climate finance and adaptation finance. Countries continue to debate the rules for carbon markets, financial support for vulnerable nations, and provisions calling for the phasing out of coal and fossil fuel subsidies.
Yes.
India wants COP26 decision must reflect urgency in scaling of finance as the conference goes into overtime. India's lead negotiator, Ms. Richa Sharma, has said the outcomes of COP26 must reflect urgency in scaling of finance and other means of implementation support to developing countries. India is the country which is developing, and it's leading the charge on behalf of developing and vulnerable countries. It is the voice of the countries, all around the world. What are the stand going to be against the developed countries who are forcing these countries to cut down carbon without actually committing a firm commitment to the financial support?
Sanjay, there is something called Article 6 in the Paris Agreement. Article 6 says that there should be rules of governance and very clearly defined how to govern the finance and to ensure transparency, and the money has to flow from industrial nations to other nations to meet their technology transfer requirement, meet their loss and damage clauses, loss and damage requirement. There is a lot of natural catastrophe, there are natural calamities and cyclones, floods, there are sea level rise and other kind of natural disaster, forest fires. And the poorer community are the larger sufferers. So particularly these island state nations and poorer nations along with developing nations are asking for their loss and damage from the developed world, which is already affected by climate change by now. And this loss and damage clauses is also not adhered to. And many of the hundreds of the negotiators worked their way on the last day, that is 12th, yesterday, although the meeting spill over to today and it is not yet concluded. And the developed nations are not able to accept how this loss and damage can be addressed to. Article 6 can be addressed in helping mitigation expenses, both in terms of climate finance and climate technologies to the developing and other poorer nations. India is putting forward its argument very effectively, but things are not yet getting finalized or materialized. Climate change, a real crisis, the technology, the scientific research related findings, and linking it to the disasters and havoc that climate change is already creating. And on the other side, geopolitics, all these are running parallel. And if you see, there was a G20 summit in Rome, in the capital of Italy. Italy was the host country for G20. And out of this, all the G20 leaders, all of them came immediately to Glasgow at Scotland in United Kingdom.
This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi today chaired a meeting on the way forward for cryptocurrency and related issues. Government sources said it was a very comprehensive meeting. It was also an outcome of a consultative process as the Reserve Bank of India, Finance Ministry and Home Ministry had done an elaborate exercise on it and consulted experts from across the country and the world. Global examples and best practices were also looked at. It was strongly felt that attempts to mislead the youth through over-promising and non-transparent advertising be stopped. It was also discussed that unregulated crypto markets cannot be let to become avenues for money laundering and terror financing. Sources said the government is cognizant of the fact that this is an evolving technology, hence the government will keep a close watch and take proactive steps. There was consensus also that the steps taken in this field by the government will be progressive and forward-looking. Government will continue to proactively engage with the experts and other stakeholders. Sources added that since the issue cuts across individual countries' borders, it was felt that it will also require global partnerships and collective strategies. President Ram Nath Kovind today gave away the National Sports Awards 2021 and Adventure Awards at Rashtrapati Bhavan. This year, Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award has been given to 12 sportspersons. We have a report.
Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award is given for spectacular and most outstanding performance in the field of sports by a sportsperson over a period of previous 4 years. Those awarded with Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna include Tokyo Olympic gold medalist and athlete Neeraj Chopra.
Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna 2021 Shri Neeraj Chopra.
Tokyo Olympics silver medalist and wrestler Ravi Kumar Dahiya, hockey players P.R. Srijesh and Manpreet Singh, and boxer Lavlina Borgohain have also been awarded Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award.
Sushri Lavlina Borgohain.
Other sportspersons who received Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award are parachuters Manish Narwal and Avni Lekhara and para-athlete Sumit Antil.
Shri Sumit Antil.
Para-shuttlers Pramod Bhagat and Krishna Nagar, cricketer Mithali Raj and footballer Sunil Chhetri were also honoured with Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award. 35 sportspersons have been honoured with Arjun Award this year. Arjun Award for outstanding performance in sports and games is given for good performance over a period of previous 4 years and showing qualities of leadership, sportsmanship and a sense of discipline. Those who received the award in this category include para-paddler Bhavana Patel, para-archer Harvinder Singh, athlete Arpinder Singh, saber fencer Bhavani Devi, cricketer Shikhar Dhawan, tennis player Ankita Raina, shooter Abhishek Verma, Mallakhambh player Himani Uttampara, and boxer Simranjeet Kaur. 18 hockey players including Birendra Lakra, Rupinder Pal Singh, Amit Rohidas, Vandana Kataria and Monica, and para-badminton player Suhas Yatiraj.
Shri Suhas Yatiraj.
Besides, athletics coach T.P. Ushak and Radhakrishnan Nair P, cricket coach Sarkar Talwar, hockey coach Sarpal Singh and Preetam Sewaj, kabaddi coach Ashan Kumar, swimming coach Tapan Kumar Panigrahi, boxing coach Sandhya Gurung, parachuting coach Jay Prakash Nautiyal, and table tennis coach Subramanian Raman have been conferred with Dronacharya Award by the President. Dhyan Chand Award for Lifetime Achievement in Sports and Games has been given to Lekha Kesi for boxing, Abhijit Kunti for chess, Davinder Singh Garcha for hockey, Vikas Kumar for kabaddi, and Sajjan Singh for wrestling. Indian Oil Corporation Limited and Manav Ratna Educational Institution have been awarded with Rashtriya Khel Protsahan Puraskar for sports promotion and development. This is Saira Mujtaba.
In cricket, the final of ICC Men's T20 World Cup will see the Trans-Tasman rivalry as Australia and New Zealand will battle out it in the Summit Clash tomorrow at the Dubai International Stadium. The match will begin at 7:30 p.m. Interestingly, neither of the two teams stepped into the tournament as favourites. However, they played some quality cricket and made a place in the finals. Meanwhile, winning the toss will also be a vital factor in the final as Dew is playing a big role in Dubai. All India Radio will broadcast ball-by-ball commentary of the T20 World Cup final. Western Europe is introducing partial lockdown to tackle upsurge in COVID-19 infections. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has announced Western Europe's first partial COVID lockdown of the winter with 3 weeks of restrictions for shops, sport and catering. He said the annoying drastic move was in response to record infections and rising intensive care cases. Latest daily figures yesterday showed 16,287 new COVID cases, just short of Thursday's record, but up a third on the previous week. Austria is also expected to back a lockdown for unvaccinated people this weekend. Austria is also expected to back a lockdown for unvaccinated people this weekend. In Austria, vaccination coverage is at 65% and the country is expected to go for a national lockdown for the unvaccinated. UN Food and Agriculture Organization has said the global food trade should hit an all-time record high in both volume and value terms. A new report today said the global food import bill should extend beyond $1.75 trillion by the end of this year. This will be a 14% increase from the previous year and 12% higher than the previous forecast, it reported. According to FAO's new food outlook, trade in foodstuffs has shown remarkable resilience to disruptions throughout the pandemic, but rapidly rising prices pose significant challenges for poorer countries and consumers. Developing regions account for 40% of the total and their food import bill is expected to rise by 20% compared to the year before.
United States today slapped sanctions on Eritrea's military and ruling party, accusing them of contributing to the war in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region. In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said they are not imposing such sanctions in order to allow time and space to see if diplomatic efforts led by African Union High Representative make progress. Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post reports Sudanese protesters return to streets as military consolidates post-coup grip. The Globe and Mail says Poland fortifies border to thwart refugees' desperate efforts to find asylum. The Guardian reports Chris Christie, Trump knows better about election lies or is just plain nuts. Financial Times writes Australia vows to help US defend Taiwan from Chinese attacks. The Wall Street Journal writes, as the US races to vaccinate kids, some countries hold back. Sputnik News writes, Lachin corridor linking Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia reopens after incident. Khalij Time reports, COVID-19 vaccine, UAE, Israel, top 2 countries in giving coronavirus jabs. Himalayan Times writes, Nepal records 260 fresh COVID-19 cases, 2 fatalities on Saturday. South China Morning Post reports China seeks greater role in setting international rules for digital economy.
A quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets US congressional delegation, says people's participation based on democratic ethos played key role in managing COVID pandemic situation in India. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar says India's economy on upward trajectory as the country is recovering from COVID-19 pandemic. Indian Air Force to showcase its might at Dubai Air Show tomorrow. Sarang, Surya Kiran aerobatics teams and light combat aircraft Tejas to take part in the event. Final draft of Climate Summit COP26 calls to accelerate the phasing out of coal and fossil fuels. President Ramnath Kovind presents National Sports Awards in New Delhi. Tokyo Olympics medalists Neeraj Chopra, Ravi Kumar Dahiya and Lavlina Borgohain among 12 sportspersons honoured with Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna Award. And in T20 Cricket World Cup, Australia to lock horns with New Zealand in summit clash at Dubai tomorrow.
India is celebrating the 152nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favourite bhajan Vaishnava Jan by artists from Sudan.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We will be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.